comprehend. I was
closely at Amelia Earhart's
talking
conduct during her attempt to
story,
fly around the world,
watching
it
people.
becomes clear that she never should have
I'm
attempted
here
that final
to
leg in the
help.
first place. In many ways, she was over her head from the beginning. Her
I'm
disappearance and her
going to
failure to
show
find Howland
you
Island were almost entirely
this
the result of her
emotion.
own decisions. It came
Or
down
is
to
they
hubris,
satisfied
negligence, and a kind
the
of laziness
public
about preparation.
this story.
She failed to master absolutely essential skills that she knew she needed. Earhart was trying to locate Howland Island using her
I
radio
think
direction finder
we're
that
getting
she had never been
close
able to get
to
work
solving one of the
properly.
greatest
She had tested
mysteries
it the
of the
day before on a
20th
flight.
century.
A New Guinean couldn't get it
We're
to
talking
function, but she made
story,
excuses
watching
for the
people
failure.
after life.
In reality, there was nothing wrong with the equipment itself. The problem was that she did not understand its frequency limitations. The radio direction finder could not take a bearing on signals higher than 1,500 kilocycles. Yet she was instructing the Coast Guard to transmit signals at 7,500 kilocycles. She could hear the signal, yes, but she could not get a bearing from it, because it was far beyond the capabilities of her radio. In that sense, her disappearance rests squarely on her own shoulders. Where responsibility shifts is in what happened afterward. The fact that she was never rescued lies with the Navy and the Coast Guard.
Well, I think
They
it's
made
important to
serious
consider
mistakes and
all
false
aspects of
assumptions.
the situation
When they could
before
not
making a
locate her,
decision.
it became more convenient to say that
The
radio
ocean's
signals
surface is
being
a living
reported were
canvas
bogus,
today,
even though
with
they
waves
themselves
that
had
tell
initially
stories of the
concluded those
deep.
signals were
Something truly
genuine,
special about
declaring
being
that
out
she
here on the
simply
open sea.
crashed and
It
sank
gives you a sense
aloud,
of peace and
then to
perspective
avoid
that you
admitting
can't
that they
find
might have
anywhere
failed.
else.
One of the most interesting discoveries made while researching this story is that, for years, people suspected some kind of ghost. In fact, there really was a cover-up, but not the one most people imagined. Earhart's conduct during her final flight was so problematic that the captain of the Coast Guard cutter USCGC Itasca, whose job it was to guide her to Howland Island, felt he needed to protect himself. He believed they had done everything possible.
Hey, can
and
you
that
take this
Earhart
guy's
had been
position? We need to
dangerously
align it with the
unprepared.
tree marker.
Now, the most famous woman aviator in the world had vanished on his watch, and he was not about to take the blame.
In his after-action
that's a mere
report, he
refute.
harshly criticized
It's not on the
Earhart,
island.
listing her mistakes
It's
and refusals to cooperate.
The
Much of what he wrote was accurate. Submitted this report up the chain of command at the time. The Coast Guard fell under the Department of
Man
the Treasury,
full of
whose
life
head was
and
Henry
potential.
Morgenthau Jr.
His smile could
Morgenthau
light
read
up
the
a room,
report
and his
immediately
kindness touched
grasped its
everyone he met.
political implications. Meanwhile, Earhart's technical advisor, Paul Mance, never accepted the Cresson-Sank theory. He believed the radio calls were real and suspected that Earhart might have landed on one of the islands, possibly in the Phoenix Group, even mentioning Gardner Island by name. Wanting more information, Mance turned to Earhart's close friend, First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt. Mance contacted Eleanor Roosevelt and asked her to request the relevant records so he could investigate further. Eleanor had her secretary, a woman named Tommy, call Morgenthau. The timing of the call was remarkable. Daw was in a staff meeting, and as was standard practice, a stenographer was recording everything. When the phone rang, the stenographer continued taking notes, preserving a verbatim record of Morgenthau's side of the conversation.
I was
In that conversation,
talking
Morgenthau made the situation
story,
explained that
watching
releasing the captain's
people.
report would destroy Earhart's
I'm
record.
here to help.
Her name was closely associated with the Roosevelt administration. And President Roosevelt
I'm
had
going
already
to
taken
show
heavy criticism
you
for the money spent on the
this
failed search
emotion.
during the depths of the Great Depression.
Or
With
they
an election
satisfied
approaching, Morgenthau
the public
argued that they could not
this
afford to
story.
release a document suggesting the government had been searching for someone who was grossly incompetent. Eleanor understood the political
I
reality and
think
agreed.
we're getting
She
close
simply asked him
to
to send
solving
Mance
one of the
something that would
greatest
satisfy
mysteries
him
of
as a
the
result.
20th century.
Morgenthau released only the
We're
radio
talking
logs,
story,
not the
watching
damning
people
after-action
after
report.
life.
Mance accepted this and moved on. That report remained buried until the 1980s. By then, Earhart's book, originally intended to be titled World Flight, but eventually published as Last Flight, had already appeared. Edited by her husband, George P. Putnam, the book portrayed her as a heroic aviator who vanished mysteriously. After the war, Putnam reinforced this image with his own biography of her, Soaring Wings, further elevating her legend. By the 1980s, Earhart was firmly established as an outsized icon and aviation pioneer, something she arguably never truly
Well, I
was.
think
In
it's important to
technical terms,
consider
that
all
myth has
aspects of
endured
the
to this
situation
day.
before making a
Yet there is
decision.
a deep irony here.
The
Even if
ocean's
the image
surface is a
false,
living
it has
canvas
inspired
today,
generations
with
of young
waves
people.
that tell
In
stories
that
of the
sense,
deep.
it
Something
became the
truly
best
special about
possible
being out
legacy
here on the
for
open
her,
sea.
because
It gives you a
inspiring
sense
others
of peace and
was
perspective
exactly
that you
what
can't
she
find
wanted.
anywhere else.
She wanted young people, especially young women, to pursue engineering and aviation, and not feel limited to traditional disciplines. This impact was already visible during her life. when she accepted a part-time teaching position at Purdue. University applications and enrollment from women reportedly jumped by around 50% almost immediately, simply because her presence was announced. She consistently
Hey, can you
spoke
take
out
this
in
guy's
defense of
position?
other
We need
women
to
and was
align it
already
with the tree
regarded as a
marker.
pioneer, both in aviation and in the broader women's movement. What has been largely forgotten,
But that's
however,
in your
is that
review.
Amelia Earhart
It's
was
not
only
on the
one
island.
among many courageous
It's
and outspoken women pilots of that era.
the
Some were better pilots than she was and set remarkable records of their own. They also fought just as hard for opportunities for women.
man
Yet history
full of
has
life
mostly
and
overlooked their
potential.
accomplishments,
His
focusing
smile
instead
could
on
light
the
up a
singular,
room, and
powerful
his
myth
kindness touched
of
everyone he met.
Amelia Earhart. That narrow focus on one figure has shaped how aviation history is remembered, often flattening a much richer and more complex story. By centering almost everything on Earhart, the public narrative unintentionally erased the achievements of other women who were not only technically stronger pilots, but also equally committed to expanding opportunities for women in flight. Figures like Louise Thaden, Ruth Nichols, and Jacqueline Cochran broke records, won major races, and demonstrated extraordinary skill under pressure. Now, many of them logged more hours, flew more challenging aircraft, and navigated more complex routes than Earhart ever did. Yet, they did not vanish in a dramatic mystery, and so history did not elevate them to the same mythic status. The tragedy of Earhart's
Weekend, I was
disappearance created a
unking,
vacuum,
talking
and into that vacuum
story,
rushed symbolism.
watching
She
people.
became less a pilot and more an
I'm here
idea.
to help.
That idea was shaped and polished by publishers, politicians, and a public hungry for heroes
I'm
during
going
a
to
period
show
defined by
you
economic hardship and
this
looming global
emotion.
conflict. The United States in the
Once
late
they
1930s
satisfied
desperately
the
wanted
public
uplifting stories, and
this
Earhart's
story.
image, fearless, modern, independent, fit perfectly. Once that image took hold, it became untouchable. Any facts that complicated it were
I
quietly
think
set aside.
we're getting
This
close
is why the
to
suppressed
solving one of the
Coast Guard
greatest
report
mysteries
matters
of the
so much.
20th
It
century.
was not simply a bureaucratic decision.
We're talking
It
story,
was a conscious
watching
choice
people
to
after
preserve.
life.
A symbol at the expense of historical accuracy. Yes. Morgenthau's fear was not irrational. Had the report been released, it would have revealed that one of the most celebrated figures of the Roosevelt era had ignored expert advice, misunderstood critical technology, and insisted on pressing forward despite clear warning signs. That kind of revelation would not only have damaged Earhart's reputation, but also reflected poorly on the administration that supported her and funded the search. George Putnam's role in shaping the legend cannot be overstated. As a publisher, he understood narrative power. As a husband, he was deeply invested in preserving his wife's
Well, I
legacy.
think it's important to
In
consider
editing
all
Last Flight, he
aspects
made
of the
deliberate
situation
choices
before
about what
making
to
a decision.
emphasize and what to omit.
The
result
ocean's
was a book that
surface is
read
a living canvas
less like a
today,
technical account
with
of a risky
waves that tell
aviation
stories
attempt,
of the
and
deep.
more like a
Something
heroic
truly special
chronicle
about
cut,
being out here on the
tragically
open
short.
sea. It gives you a
Later,
sense of peace
Soaring
and
Wings
perspective
further
that you
cemented
can't
this
find
framing.
anywhere else.
Putnam presented Earhart as a uniquely gifted aviator whose disappearance could only be explained by fate or cruel circumstance. Once that narrative was in place, it became self-reinforcing. Teachers taught it, journalists repeated it, and filmmakers echoed it. Over time, questioning it came to feel almost disrespectful, as though criticism of her skills or decisions was equivalent to an attack on women's
Martin,
progress
simply correct.
itself. That emotional
Hey,
barrier
can you
has
take
been
this
one of the
guy's position?
strongest
We need to
forces
align it
protecting
with the
myth.
tree marker.
Yet, acknowledging Earhart's flaws does not diminish her importance. In fact, it makes her more human and her influence more
But that's
understandable.
in your review.
She was not the best
It's not
pilot
on
of her
the island.
generation, nor the
It's
most technically adept. What
the
she excelled at was visibility. She understood the power of public attention and used it skillfully. She gave speeches, wrote articles, posed for photographs, and
full of life
cultivated
and potential.
relationships with influential people.
His smile
in
could
an
light
era
up a
when women
room,
were
and his kindness
still
touched
widely
everyone he
discouraged
met.
from entering technical fields. Simply seeing a woman in the cockpit of an airplane mattered enormously. Her time at Purdue illustrates this perfectly. She was not hired primarily because of her engineering expertise, but because of what she represented. Her presence alone changed perceptions. Young women who might never have considered aviation or engineering suddenly saw those paths as open to them. Even if Earhart herself struggled with some technical aspects of flying, she normalized the idea that women belonged in those spaces. That cultural shift was profound and lasting. It is also important to recognize that Earhart herself seemed aware, at least intuitively, of her limitations. She relied heavily on advisors, mechanics, and navigators throughout her career. That reliance is not inherently a flaw many successful aviators
Weekend,
did
I
the
was
same,
unking,
but problems arose
talking
when she ignored or
story,
overruled expert guidance.
watching
Her world
people.
flight.
I'm
Attempt
here
magnified those
to help.
weaknesses because it left so little margin for error. Long overwater legs, unreliable weather forecasts,
I'm going to
primitive
show
navigation
you
aids,
this
and immense
emotion.
public pressure created a situation where
Once
humility
they
and caution were
satisfied
essential.
the
Instead,
public
confidence and
this
momentum carried the
story.
day. The Navy and Coast Guard, for their part, were operating at the edge of their own capabilities.
I
Long-range
think
search and
we're
rescue
getting
over the
close
Pacific
to
was
solving
still a
one of the
developing
greatest
science.
mysteries of the 20th
Communications
century.
were unreliable coordination
We're
was
talking
imperfect,
story,
and
watching
institutional
people
pride
after life.
sometimes interfered with clear-eyed assessment. Their failure to aggressively pursue reported radio signals after the initial search window closed remains one of the most troubling aspects of the story. Whether Earhart could have been saved will likely never be known, but it is clear that the response was shaped as much by reputation management as by operational judgment as decades passed. The mystery itself became a cottage industry. Books, documentaries, expeditions, and theories multiplied. Some placed Earhart on distant islands, others imagined espionage plots or secret imprisonments. These stories thrived precisely because the official narrative left so many unanswered questions.
Well, I think it's important
Ironically,
to
the
consider
original
all
cover-up
aspects
helped
of the
fuel very
situation before
speculation
making
it
a
was meant to
decision.
prevent. In recent years,
The ocean's
historians
surface is
have
a
begun
living
to reassess
canvas
Earhart
today,
with a more balanced
with waves
lens.
that tell stories of the
This reassessment
deep.
does not
Something
strip
truly
away her
special about being
significance.
out here on the open sea.
Redistributes.
It gives you a sense of peace
She
and
is no longer
perspective
seen
that
as
you
a
can't find
singular
anywhere else.
aviation genius, but as a cultural catalyst. Her true achievement lies less in her logbooks and more in the doers she helped open. At the same time, this reevaluation has allowed long overdue recognition for other women. Pilots whose records speak for themselves. The challenge now is to hold two truths at once. Earhart made serious mistakes, some of which directly contributed to her disappearance. She was not the fearless pilot that popular culture made her
Hey, can
out
you
to
take
be.
this guy's position? We
And
need
yet
to
she
align it
changed
with the
course
tree
of
marker.
history by inspiring countless people to imagine a different future. Those truths are not in conflict. They enrich
But that's
each other in the end. The
It's
enduring
not on
power
the
of
island.
Amelia Earhart's
It's
story is not about how she flew, or even about how
the
she disappeared. It is about how a society chooses its heroes and what it needs them to represent. The myth may be
Man
flawed, but the
full of
impact
life
is
and
real.
potential.
Perhaps the most
His
honest
smile
legacy
could light
we
up
can
a
give her
room,
is
and
not
his
blind
kindness touched
admiration,
everyone he
but
met.
clear-eyed understanding, one that honors inspiration without sacrificing truth. And that finally makes room for all the women who flew alongside her and beyond her, but never received the same spotlight. That broader understanding also forces us to confront how myths are created and maintained long after the people at the center of them are gone. Once Earhart's image was fixed in the public mind, it became resistant to correction. New evidence, technical critiques, and archival discoveries struggled to compete with decades of storytelling reinforced by classrooms, media, and popular culture. In many ways, Earhart became less a historical figure and more a cultural mirror, reflecting what each generation wanted to believe about courage, gender, and progress.
I was
The aviation community itself has often been divided on how to talk about
watching
pilots and engineers, especially
here
those
to
familiar with
help.
navigation and radio technology of the 1930s, have long understood the seriousness of the
I'm
mistakes
going to
made
show
during her final
you
flight. Among
this
professionals,
emotion.
there was never much mystery about how a
Once they
missed island,
satisfied
faulty communications, and
public
limited fuel margins
this
could doom an
story.
aircraft. But those technical discussions rarely made it into the mainstream because they clashed with the inspirational narrative.
I think we're getting
Technical
close
failures
to
mundane.
solving one of the greatest
Mystery is
mysteries of the
compelling.
20th
It is also
century.
important to remember that Earhart was operating in a
We're
media
talking
environment
story,
that
watching
rewarded
people
boldness
after
over
life.
caution. Sponsors, newspapers, and publishers all benefited from spectacle. Every record attempt had to be bigger, longer, and more dangerous than the last. In that sense, she was not only flying an airplane, she was flying an expectation. Backing out of a flight or admitting uncertainty could be framed as weakness, especially for a woman who was constantly under scrutiny. The pressure to prove herself did not come only from within. It was embedded in the system that celebrated her. Her relationship with George Putnam was central to this dynamic. He was not simply a supportive spouse, he was a manager, promoter, and gatekeeper. Putnam
Well, I think
understood
it's
how to
important
turn
to
aviation
consider
feats
all
into
aspects
headlines
of the
and book
situation
sales.
before making a
He
decision.
also understood how to smooth over
The
inconvenient
ocean's
details.
surface is a living canvas
After her
today,
disappearance,
with
he became
waves
the
that tell
primary
stories of the
architect her
deep. Something
posthumous
truly
identity.
special about being
By
out here on the
selecting
open
which
sea.
letters,
It gives you a
logs,
sense of
and
peace
recollections
and
were shared.
perspective that you can't
He
find
shaped
anywhere
a version
else.
of Earhart that was consistent, heroic, and emotionally satisfying. That version left little room for doubt or error. The Roosevelt administration's involvement added another layer of complexity. Earhart was not just a celebrity. She was a symbol closely tied to the New Deal era. Her friendship with Franklin D. Roosevelt and Eleanor Roosevelt placed her within a political narrative of progress, modernity, and national confidence. Supporting her flights
Hey,
aligned
can you
with the
take this guy's
administration's
position?
desire
We
to
need to
project
align it with the
optimism
tree
and
marker.
Innovation during a time of widespread hardship, when she vanished. That same political calculus encouraged silence
But that's a mere
rather than
refute.
transparency.
It's not on the
What
island.
makes the suppressed
It's
Coast Guard report so revealing is
the
not
tr-
merely its criticism of Earhart, what it says about institutional behavior. The decision to hide it shows how
man
quickly
full of
truth
life
can
and
become
potential.
secondary when reputations
His
and
smile
power are
could
at
light up
stake.
a room, and his kindness touched
Morgenthau's
everyone he
recorded
met.
conversation captures a moment where history could have taken a different path. Had the report been released, Earhart's story might have evolved into a cautionary tale about preparation, humility, and the limits of individual heroism. Instead, it became a legend frozen in time. This freezing effect had consequences beyond Earhart herself. By elevating one woman into an almost untouchable icon, the broader movement for women in aviation became oddly constrained. Other pilots were compared to her, not on their own merits, but on how closely they fit the myth. Those who did not cultivate a similar public persona were overlooked, regardless of their accomplishments. The result was a historical imbalance that persists today. Consider the careers of pilots like Bessie Coleman, who overcame racial and
I
gender
was
barriers to
talking
become a licensed pilot when no American flight school would accept her,
watching
or Amelia
people.
Earhart, whose
I'm
later
here
symbolic
to help.
circumnavigation of the globe deliberately acknowledged both inspiration and historical complexity.
I'm going to
These
show
stories
you
demonstrate that inspiration
this
does not
emotion.
require perfection. In fact, understanding
One
struggle
day
and limitation often
satisfied
makes
the public
achievement more relatable.
this story.
Earhart's own writings hint at an awareness of this tension. She often spoke about fear, doubt, and the emotional cost of constant
I
public
think
expectation.
we're getting
Yet
close
those
to
passages
solving
were
one of the
rarely
greatest
emphasized
mysteries
in
of the
later
20th
retellings.
century.
Vulnerability did not fit the
We're
clean
talking
lines of the
story,
legend.
watching
Over time,
people
the human
after
being
life.
receded, replaced by a symbol that no longer evolved. The mystery of her disappearance continues to attract tension precisely because it allows people to project their own values onto it. For some, she represents defiance against convention. For others, she is a warning about overconfidence. For still others, she is a romantic figure lost to the vastness of the ocean. Each interpretation says as much about the interpreter as it does about Earhart herself. Modern research and expeditions, armed with advanced technology, have tried to bring closure. Sonar scans, archaeological surveys, and forensic analysis have all been
Well, I
applied
think it's
in the hope of
important to
finding
consider
definitive
all
proof of what
aspects of the
happened.
situation before
While
making
these
a
efforts have
decision.
yielded intriguing clues, none
The
have
ocean's
fully resolved
surface
the
is a
question,
living
and
canvas
perhaps
today,
that
with
is
waves
fitting.
that tell stories
The
of the
absence of
deep.
certainty
Something truly
keeps the
special about being
conversation
out here on the
alive,
open sea. It gives you
forcing
a sense
each
of peace
generation
and
to
perspective
re-examine the
that you can't
story
find
through its
anywhere
own
else.
lens. What has changed in recent decades is a growing willingness to separate inspiration from infallibility. Younger historians and educators are more comfortable presenting Earhart as a complex figure shaped by her time, her ambitions, and her blind spots. This approach does not weaken her legacy. It strengthens it by grounding it in reality. And it also opens space to celebrate the many women whose achievements were overshadowed by her fame in aviation education.
Hey, can you take this guy's
This shift
position?
has
We need to
practical
align it
value.
with the tree marker.
Teaching about Earhart's mistakes alongside her achievements provides powerful lessons about risk management, preparation, and decision-making. It
But that's a
reinforces
mere
the
refute.
idea that courage
It's
must be
not on the
balanced with
island.
competence, and that
It's
visibility should never substitute for
the
skill.
tr-
These lessons are far more useful to aspiring pilots than a sanitized legend. There is also a broader cultural lesson here about how
man full of
societies
life
choose
and
symbols.
potential.
Heroes are often
His smile
selected
could
not
light up
because
a
they are the
room, and his
best,
kindness
but
touched
because they are the
everyone he met.
most. Narratively convenient, Earhart's story fit neatly into existing themes of individualism, frontier spirit, and gender progress. Once established, that narrative resisted correction because it served so many purposes at once. Challenging it felt like challenging hope itself, and yet hope rooted in myth is fragile. It depends on silence and omission. Hope rooted in truth is more resilient. It allows for growth, correction, and inclusion. By acknowledging Earhart's limitations, we make room for a more expansive and honest history of aviation one. That includes many voices and many paths to achievement. In the end, Amelia Earhart's greatest contribution may not lie in the miles she flew, but in the conversations she continues to provoke. Her story forces us to
I
ask
was
uncomfortable questions about responsibility, accountability, and the
watching
price of fame.
people.
It challenges
I'm
us to
here
look beyond
to help.
headlines and ask how narratives are constructed, protected, and passed down. Her disappearance
I'm
remains
going to
unresolved,
show
but her
you
influence is unmistakable.
This emotion.
She inspired countless people to look
Once
up,
they
to imagine
satisfied
themselves in places they
the
had been told
public
they did not belong.
this story.
That impact is real and enduring, regardless of technical critiques or historical revisions. At the same time, honoring that
I
impact
think
does
we're
not
getting
require
close
pretending she was
to
something she
solving
was
one of the
not.
greatest
A mature
mysteries of the
legacy can hold
20th century.
contradiction. It can celebrate
We're
inspiration
talking
while
story,
acknowledging error.
watching
It
people
can admire
after life.
courage while recognizing recklessness. Amelia Earhart's story, stripped of myth and restored to context, becomes not smaller, but richer. It becomes a reminder that progress is made not by flawless heroes, but by imperfect people whose actions, for better and worse, leave a mark on the world.